Okay, here we're going to look at a game played by Mikhail Tal in the Latvian Championship. Not quite a miniature because this one goes all the way to move number 21, but a pretty short game. So this was, again, just this game really shows the attacking genius of Tal. It just blows my mind. I'll never be able to play like he does in this lifetime. So e4, d6, d4, knight f6, knight c3, g6. This is known as the Pirc defense for black. It's spelled P-I-R-C, pronounced Pirc. A lot of people call it the Perk. So again, it's one of these hyper-modern lines for black. It can definitely... I used to play it when I first started playing chess, and I didn't play it very well with the black side, and I abandoned it. I never quite grasped the subtleties of it. It can be a tricky defense. It's sound and solid, but I think it's also easy to get overrun, as you'll see in this game. So Tal does something very typical, plays an early f4 here to gain a lot of space. You've got these three pawns in the center, and this is the theory, this is the whole idea of hyper-modern chess. White takes the center, and black is going to sort of try to counter the center by attacking from the flanks, but never quite happens in this game. So c6, e5, Tal takes some space in the center, kicking that f6 knight. So he plays knight to d5. Again, so far so good. Tal plays knight e4, keeping the knight, keeps it posted strongly in the center. Maybe some chances later on to swing it over to the king side. Here he plays bishop g7, again just trying to facilitate some kingside castling for black. c4, gaining even more space here. Got to do something about this knight. Okay, so he plays back to b6 just to defend the knight. This is kind of feels a little bit like there's an Alyakhin's defense line too, where it kind of reminds me of this position. A little different, but in Alyakhin's defense, you end up with this knight on b6. White usually has this big center, and black tries to counterattack. So h4, this is one of those moves that's saying, I dare you to castle on the king side, because if you do, I'm going to play h5, and I'm going to open things up and cause you some trouble. So black rather boldly decides to castle. So already let's look at maybe one deviation here, which would be best, because this is not the best move for black at all. He's, as they say, castling into it. It looks like here knight takes c4 is probably the best move to play. After knight c4, a couple different lines. If he plays bishop c4, then black just plays d5 and he's doing fine. He's going to regain a piece, getting some of the pieces off the board, and should be fine in that line. Another line here is the more interesting is if white plays e6 here. So after e6, the idea is he's trying to break open the king side. So queen a5 check, bishop d2, knight takes d2, take the knight, bishop recaptures, queen takes d2, queen takes, king takes, and then bishop d4. So the assessment here, what do we have? Well, basically black has three pawns for a piece. He's got the two bishops, totally sound pawn structure, and this would be a pretty even game. It looks like both sides would have chances here. I would prefer black. I don't mind playing with I like, kind of playing these unbalanced position where you have the pawns for the piece. Especially black has the two bishops. But again, a very, I would say, dynamically balanced position is what they say. So that would be the more interesting line, but instead, black castles into it. Okay, so Tal says, okay, here I come. I'm going to play h5. So at this point, now knight takes c4 doesn't work anymore because white's going to go ahead and open the king side. And after the bishop takes and d5, now queen g4 is coming. And the idea is now black's already castled on the king side, and white can start creating some threats on the king side, maybe by playing like queen h4, knight g5, knight f3 to g5. Lots of different attacking ideas here. So one interesting line, just to show you how quickly black could go wrong, would be if he took the knight. This is now mate in, after he takes the knight, it's mate in 5 after queen takes g6. There's no real good way to stop the the queen from coming to h7 and giving checkmate. If clearly moving the rook to give some space doesn't work because queen f7 is just mate. And so there's no good way to really guard against queen h7. Even if he puts the knight in the way, you just take. Basically at this point, black's reduced to spite checks. So just a real quick way for black to get in trouble. If he takes, say the bishop, then queen h4 is coming again with the same mate threats. After he plays rook e8, f5 is going to give white a very strong attacking position, basically winning position. All right, so let's go back to the game though. But just showing you how it's interesting how one move can make a difference. Okay, so after h5, he plays c5, trying to counterattack in the center. Tal opens up the position, plays queen d3. Again, the idea is to try to get this queen into a more active position over on the king side. Plays rook e8, trying to give his king a little bit of space. e6, breaking open the king side. So yeah, it gives up a pawn, but he's going to get it back pretty quickly. So he takes queen g3. The target now is simply g6. So here he plays knight f8, and he was probably thinking, well, with this knight, I've got the pawn covered. I've got h7 covered. The bishop on g7 is covering h8 and h6. All the squares are basically covered now. So maybe black was thinking this will be a solid move to defend. So after knight f8. We see the first brilliant move of the game. We see bishop h5. So Tal's just going straight for the jugular here. And it would be possible to actually take it. Maybe, black didn't trust himself. Again, after rook h5, white's down a piece, but black's king side is totally exposed. We have the knight, the rook, the queen, all invested in the attack. And again, black can probably defend, but it's going to start being a tricky defense. It would be easy to make some mistakes here. So totally playable, but black does not do that. Instead, he takes the pawn. Again, probably okay. Probably still hanging in there at this point. Everything's okay. But if you're playing an attacking genius like Tal, I would start feeling really nervous. So c takes d4. The next move here, bishop g6. And this is where black really kind of gets totally in trouble. He plays bishop d7, and now white has a huge advantage, almost a winning advantage. So interesting how one move can change in the assessment. The critical move here is to play knight c4, actually. So again, we see this knight c4 kind of coming to the rescue. And the idea is if, white does something like, say, bishop h5, the idea is after queen a5 check, the queen can come back over and at least give some defense now on the king side. Can lead to some unclear positions for sure. Maybe king f2 instead. Again, queen f5's coming. And again, the idea, the queen is going to lend some defense to the king side. It's kind of the main idea with playing that knight c4. Not so much to grab the pawn, but to facilitate this check to help speed up your defense. So black needs somebody to help guard the king side. But he plays bishop d7, basically the losing move here. And now white plays this brilliant move, rook h5. Now again, we said that black has all the squares on the h-file covered around his king, but Tal's going to bring the rook to the g-file and basically decide the game. So winning advantage here for white. So he plays bishop c6. Again, it's kind of hard to recommend much because he's losing. Rook g5, setting up this pin on the bishop, going to exploit that. So he plays rook g5, knight g6, and again now it's mate in 5. No matter what black does, he's in dire straits. So he plays bishop e4. Well, okay, so simply rook g7, and again lots of different winning moves here. It just kind of depends on what black does. He plays king h8. And after queen g5, it's game over. There's no real good way to prevent the queen coming to h6 and then giving mate on h7. So if he puts the bishop in the way, again, that doesn't really help at all. So, all right, so a beautiful little attacking game. There's some beautiful sidelines in this game, too. I mean, you could literally spend hours examining some of the sidelines. But I wanted to hit some of the highlights and just show you how interesting, chess can be. Just one little move all of a sudden changes the assessment of the position to to winning to losing. And certainly some of these moves were surprising to me, especially playing that move bishop h5, a pretty daring move for sure. So, all right, I hope you enjoyed this game, and I'd be happy to show some more games by Tal in the future.